Hi everyone. Today we're going to do a Photoshop tutorial. So make sure you have downloaded Photoshop already with a license through the link in Canvas and that you've downloaded the tutorial assets from the box folder and then open Photoshop and follow along with me. I'm going to stop my video and share my screen now. Okay, so go to your Photoshop application and open that up. And once it is loaded, go to Create New and title it your last name and your first name, and then week 1. And the width will be 640 pixels, and you want to make sure that you have pixels here and not inches or any of the other measurements. And if you accidentally have inches, it's going to make a very large file and Photoshop might crash. So if you are having problems later and your Photoshop is working really slowly, or if it crashes, make sure and check that you didn't accidentally create a file in inches, because sometimes that can happen. And we want to have 72 pixels per inch as our resolution, which will always be what we use for digital projects. Anything that's going to be on a screen is at most going to have a resolution of 72. If it were a print project, we would go according to the printer, usually 144 or higher for print, but there's no need to make it a higher resolution because that won't show up on our screen. And we want RGB color, which is also what we use for digital color. CMYK is what we would use for print. So RGB color, a white background, and we'll leave that as it is, and then hit create. And now we have our Photoshop canvas and our white square. And to zoom in, I use these shortcuts often. It's Command plus will zoom in, and out is Command minus. And I'm on a Mac. I think on a PC it's Control plus and Control minus. And you can also go to View and Actual Size, and that will give you the actual size of the image. And then over here, so these are our tools. Our tool bar is here. This is our different kinds of color swatches, gradients, patterns. We have adjustments and libraries. And then here's our layer panel, which we're really going to be working a lot in here. And it will automatically be locked. So what you want to do is double click on that and it will float the image. So now it's floated and I can work with it. And I'm going to call this backdrop. So I double clicked and renamed this layer to backdrop. And before we do any kind of things with images, we're just going to generate some background here. So if you go up to image and go to adjustments and then to hue and saturation, we can start generating colors in our image, and we have to bring down the lightness here in order for that to show up. And we change our saturation. We want to have colorize and preview selected. And now here I can create any kind of background color, and if I change the saturation, we'll make it more or less saturated. And if I have this up, it will be white. So make sure you turn down your lightness and select a color, any color that you like, and then hit OK. And then we're going to look at some of the filter effects with just pixels without even bringing in any images yet. So if you go to filter and add something like noise, you can add in some noise. And here we can change the amount of noise. And it's just taking those pixels on the screen and adding in different things. You can do uniform or Gaussian. I'll do uniform, and we could do monochromatic using only the color here or not. I'm gonna keep it like this and then hit OK. And if we go through some of these different filters, we can kind of play around and see what they do. So if I go to distort and polar coordinates, I'll see what that does. And I can do polar to rectangular to polar or polar to rectangular. So this does that. And I can Command Z and undo that and do distort polar coordinates and try this out. So now I have this kind of effect over here. And if I go to something like pixelate, I already have this noise, but I can just see what it does. So there's mezzotint, fine dots, medium lines, short lines. So I can do all these different kinds of things. To create different effects with just working with the pixels alone. So if you go through and play with some of these filters using only a background color, you can see all the kinds of different things that you can generate with simple filter effect alone. And once you find something that you like, then save your document. So mine asked me to save it to the cloud or my computer. I'm just going to save mine to my computer. And I want to have the layers, and I will save it like that and then hit OK. So you have to save it at least once after you create the file. Okay, so now we're going to look at some of the basic cutout tools for working with cutting out images, changing images, and these are really tools that you're gonna probably need to use often. So go to the images that you downloaded from Canvas and open the one that says face.jpg. And it will look like this. I'm gonna zoom in. I'm gonna double click on this to float it from the background. And for this, I'm going to cut out the face using the pen tool. And that is over here. So if you click on the pen, and I want to have a path selected up here. And I also am going to click on this little rubber band option. And then as I click, it's going to connect the dots, which will let me draw along the image that I want to cut out. If I click and hold, I can start to make these curves. So if I want to make not a straight line between the dots, I can start to make this a little bit curved. And then continue on clicking. If I hold Command, I can move my dots along here as I am adjusting things a little bit. And then if I let go of Command, it will bring back my pen. So I'm just going to kind of quickly move this around. And cut out the space. And you can get really detailed with this or not, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. And then you want to get back to the first square that you put, and that little circle will show up, and then you click on that in order to close it. So now I have this sort of shape here. And if you go to the path over here, there is a work path, and the work path is this path that I just created. And I can right click here and say make selection. And then if I want to add a feather radius, I'm going to add a feather radius of 3 pixels. So that's going to kind of feather the edge of this. And I'm going to keep the anti-alias checked, and I'll hit OK. And now it's going to turn this path into a selection. So it turned my path into a selection. And now I'm going to go to my move tool. And there's a few ways to do this. I like to just drag out my file and then use my move tool, and I hold on to what I just cut out and I drag it over to my other image and I let go. You can also keep it in here and drag it up over here, and then it will change it to this other file, and then you can drag it there. I'm going to delete that one. So now I have cut out my face, and I went pretty quickly with my pen tool, but then I feathered that edge along it. I gave it a 3 pixel feather edge. So it kind of blends my sort of like messy pen tool work there, but it also gives me this sort of feathered kind of look to it. So if I go back to my layers, I'm going to double click on the text there, and I'm going to rename that layer face. And it's a good idea to always name your layers so that you know what they are, because eventually a lot of times it will be a lot of layers and you'll get lost. So make sure you do that. And if you hold on to a corner and drag it in and out, it will, or any of these boxes, it will resize the image and keep the dimensions. If you hold the shift key and size it, it will let you kind of freely transform that without keeping the dimensions as they are. So you can do that. And then you'll have to hit enter once you are done with the transformation, because it will stay. So now I hit enter to get that done. And you can also go up to File, Edit, Transform, and you can scale it. You can do, you can do rotate. You can do skew, which will let you kind of move these things in a non-square shape, perspective. So you can transform. Here I can distort this and change this kind of angle. So I can do all these kinds of things with the transform tool. I'm just going to leave it like that. And then I click enter to get out of that transform tool. So you can see I bent it a little bit, and now it's a little bit blurry because I did something weird with the transform. So I'm going to actually go back and get another one. I have to hold that in place and then see, it's a little bit blurry because I was messing around with it too much. So I have my face image here. And now I don't need this one anymore. I just wanted to cut that out so I can close it and not save. So now, let's say I wanted to clean up this edge a bit more because I did it quickly and I don't like it and I want to add in a layer mask. So with this layer selected, go up to layer and layer mask and reveal all. And it will create a layer mask here, which is something that we can use to adjust the image without it affecting the actual pixels of this image. We'll just be working on a layer mask that will be applied to it on top. And if we don't like it, we can later remove the layer mask. So one of the things that we can do is clean up the edges by using this paintbrush and make sure that you have the black. You might have the white and black reversed like this. Make sure you have black and white. And I just go to the image over here. There's brushes. I go to get something like a soft round, 65 pixels or smaller, and make sure that your brush settings don't have the dynamics clicked. And we also want to have up here normal mode selected, and the flow I'm going to do as 30. And then this right here is the airbrush tool that you can build up so that it will add to the previous stroke. So I'm going to click that so that it's darkened and make sure that that is selected. And then I'm going to draw around these edges. So you can't really see. I'm going to make the flow a little bit denser. So now you can see it's kind of erasing those edges. I go in closer because it's masking it. So I could keep on kind of fixing this up with the mask and make it have only the things that I want it to show up, and it's masking it and kind of blending it. So that's because I have this flow with this amount, and I can keep clicking in this area and just add on to this mask and really change the shape of this how I want it to be. And that's all in the mask instead of on this actual layer here. Okay, so that is good enough for now. And those are tools that you can use for cutting things out. So we're going to look at more ways to cut things out because this is a really handy thing to be able to do and to be able to do quickly. So go to File and Open, and then open, let's see, let's do the rock. So open the rock, double click on that so that it floats. And let's get the magic wand tool. So the magic wand is super handy. It looks like this. If you hold this down, there are other tools behind it. So you might have something like this here instead. If you can't find a tool on the toolbar here that I use, you might need to right click, or yeah, no, left click, hold it down, and then find it. So there's the magic wand tool. So that might be there or not. So if you get the magic wand tool and then go over to your image here, this will select pixels of a similar sample. So if I click here in this dark area, it's getting the pixels that are all within this range, but the tolerance is really low. So it's only going to get a really particular kind. So I'm going to set this to 32. I'm going to hit Command D, deselect that, and do it again. And so now I have this selecting this much more because it's including a bigger range of tolerance. I'm going to deselect that, and let's try 60. And then I'm clicking down here. So that's getting all this kind of like gray and black. And now if I hit delete, it's going to delete all of that. But that's too much. So I'm going to do Command Z and Command D, so deselect. So when I select this, I'm doing Command D, but you can also go up to select and deselect. So we'll get rid of those dots here. So let's go back to 32. And select here. So when I select these different areas, it helps me to be able to adjust this because this background doesn't have all of the same color in the background. So I want to select this kind of range of things. And so when I click on this here, and then I look over in the channels, you can see the different color channels that it is analyzing. And this helps me if I want to get rid of part of the background around an object. The magic wand is really useful. So I'm just going to delete, 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 and then drag this out over here, and I'll resize it. And put it, I don't know, here like this. I can also do, so if I go back to this and I undo that. So this is the history tool, which I could just do Control Command Z and go back and undo, or I can go all the way, through this kind of history. It will let me undo all of these actions really quickly, so I don't have to do Command Z, undo, Command Z, or edit, undo, edit, undo. I can just go back through this. So now I'm going to deselect this. And the other thing that I can do is the opposite. So let's do I could select this area and then go up to selection and do inverse, and then delete that. And now I have the inverse of the selection that I did. So I'm going to deselect and bring this over too, because that's kind of funky. And I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to include it somewhere in here. Okay. This is still too big. So that's a couple of ways to cut things out and bring them in. And now I'm going to rename this, double click on the text and put rock 1 and rock 2. And this one is titled face. It's always good. Label as you go. Sometimes I forget and go back. So I have this selection, and so far we've only had all of our layers be in the normal mode, but I can also change this mode and it will do different things. So I can screen it on top. I can do vivid light, linear light, pin light. If you go through all of these things, the layer mode will really change the way that it looks. Difference subtracts it. Well, there's also subtract, exclusion, divide, hue. I can just add the hue, saturation, the color, or the luminosity. And all these things get really useful when you are trying to add in different things. You know, we're working with these example images that don't really make sense exactly, but knowing how to change the layer mode can really change the images that you're creating. So I'm going to stick with that one. And hit enter. Okay, so now I'm going to, here, I'll move this right here, do another tool for cutting things out, and I will go to File and Open, and we'll go to the heart image and open it. It's really tiny. Double click to float the image. And then I'm going to Command plus to zoom in. And now I want to use the magnetic lasso tool to cut this out. So over here, there is a magnetic lasso. Mine is above the magic wand. There's a lasso tool, polygonal lasso tool, and magnetic lasso tool. So make sure you have magnetic lasso tool. And let's add a feather of 1 and the contrast to 10 and the frequency to 7. And then enter. And now when I actually, I'm going to undo that. I think that let's see what the 57 frequency. Yeah, keep it at the 57 frequency. So as you go along the edge here, it will start to analyze this edge and help you to just kind of drag along here. So I have these kind of like curved shapes and pixelated edges, and it will just kind of help me to cut out this shape without having to draw all these curves by just going along the pixel edges and analyzing the contrast of the pixels. And this is really useful, really, really useful. I use magnetic lasso tool all the time. And you can get really detailed cutouts of things, which helps so that you don't have to do a lot of edge work later. So now I have this, you have to complete the circle and get back to the original pixel or point that you started. And then when you click on it, you'll get this dotted edge line for our selection. And I'm going to go to the move tool and I drag this out and drag the heart in over here. So now it's cut out the heart image and I can use this, and it gave it a bit of a feather. I could remove that feather if I don't want to have that little tiny bit of a feather edge. I think it kind of helps to mask some of the little tiny movements that might not be perfect, but it really depends on what image you're cutting out. And I'm just going to place that somewhere over here. Doesn't really matter where. This is not a beautiful art piece. It's just a tool exercise. So I can also play with these different dissolves and the different modes and see what kinds of things, depending on what the pixel information is, it can do some really interesting things. And if I put it up at the top, really the layer mode will change based on, the effect will change based on what's behind it. So you can kind of move it around and see what you want it to interact with. That's kind of neat. I could even like blow this up. You wouldn't even have to know that it's what it is if I just like the effect. And let's see, what was that? I left mine at divide. You can pick whatever you want. You can also change the transparency and the opacity of something. So if I just wanted this to come through really lightly, I could change this opacity and do all these different kinds of effects based on a relation between the layer style and the opacity. And I use that frequently. Let's see. We'll leave that. And then the last one, if you go to File, Open, and get the image labeled hand and double click it. And then we can zoom in, Command plus, Command plus. This one has a very solid background, so I could use a color picker. Actually, the magic wand would work. I have to select this layer. The magic wand would work really well with that. We'll immediately select all the black pixels and I could just delete that and have the hand. I'm going to Control Z. I'm going to, and Command D, do another mode of selection, which is the color range. So I could select this color and it will give me fuzziness. And I hit OK, and then it's going to select all of the black pixels. And now I could do a select inverse and get the move tool and then just drag this out here and I have the hand. These will all be back here. I'm just gonna not save it, not save it. So those are some of the most basic tools for cutting out, working with the layers. You want to make sure that wherever you are working, so I'm going to label this as hand, that you have the right layer selected. So if I am going to erase something, this is the eraser tool. Now I've erased part of my hand. Let's say that's not what I meant to do. I wanted to erase the background. You have to pay attention to which layer is selected, because whatever tool you select is only going to apply to whatever layer is selected. So now I'm getting rid of that. And I can Control Z, or again, I can use my history brush, history tool up here and just get rid of all of those layers. So make sure you know which layer you're on when you're working, and the eyeball just lets you see it or not. It doesn't erase it, but if you wanted to see what something looks like without that layer there, then you can just click on this eyeball over here, and you can also drag these, in different orders. And if I bring the hand up to the top, for example, then it will be on top of the face. So the order that the layers appear here is also the order of what will be in front of what. So if I want the face in front of the hand, then I would bring that up. And if I want the hand in front of the face, then I would bring that up on top. So this is the order in which the layers are stacked. Okay, so that is the first tutorial for Photoshop to practice with, get used to those cutting out tools and follow along, cut out all of these things and post your image at the end for your tutorial assignment. And when you do that, you just go to File and then Save As. So you should already have it saved on to the computer, which I already have it saved as a Photoshop document, as a Photoshop file. But then for your assignment to turn in, go to File and Export, and then Export As. And we're going to export as a JPEG. Keep the height as it is, and then hit export. Oops, I don't want it to go into that folder. I want it to go on the desktop. Okay, so now here it is as my JPEG. And this is what you will upload to Canvas when you're done with the tutorial. Okay, so good luck photoshopping, and I'll see you soon. Bye.